Hi, everybody, and welcome. I'm Judi Glova, and today is day 2 of the Burnout Solution series. And I've collected some of the best experts for you to teach you about how to have your own burnout solution. So I'm excited because today is all about accountability, setting and keeping strong boundaries to become radically self-reliant and have more time for yourself. Not only that, we're going to be talking about resilience and how important that is. So I want to remind you that we are meeting every day throughout this online series in our Facebook group called the More Than Enough Women Circle. I'll be live in the evening, so don't miss my daily recap and highlights. Plus, you'll be able to answer or ask any questions because I want to make sure that you can take action of the tools and skills that you've learned each day. So if you haven't already, head over to the More Than Enough Women's Circle, and we will see you there later today. So I want to welcome Lori Cook, and before I do that, I do want to give you a little bit of background about Lori. Lori is the president and CEO of the Healthcare Businesswomen's Association. It's a nonprofit with a community of more than 50,000 women and men and 125 corporate partner companies. Collectively, they are a united force for change and channel their combined energies and enthusiasm into furthering the advancement and impact of women in healthcare. Lori is a dedicated advocate, speaker, and thought leader for gender parity. She was twice recognized as a Pharma Voice 100 Most Inspiring People in Life Sciences and awarded the American Society of Association Executives Mentor of the Year. So, Lori, we are going to be focusing today, specifically our topic is the number one solution to bounce back from burnout. So, Lori, hi, how are you?
Hello, Judy. Glad to see you.
Glad to see you too. And I just love what you do. And just full disclosure for everybody who's listening, Lori and I have known each other for many, many years. I was actually a member of the HBA for many years and also on the board of the Metro chapter. So I have a huge affinity for the HBA, all that it stands for, specifically how it really does support women around the world in their careers. So whether or not you're in healthcare or not, the HBA is such a strong, powerful organization that really walks its talk and supports women in their careers. So with that said, first off, I just want to get a general sense as to, Lori, why do you think we have such an epidemic of burnout and overwhelm with women these days?
Well, our world is changing pretty quickly. And yesterday I heard a phrase that was pretty powerful, which is, today is the least change you'll ever see in your life. And I was like, what? But the point was, our world is going to be just getting faster. People say change is here to stay. Well, change is going to even get faster. So we need to have tools to be able to deal with that and to not get burnout.
Yeah, and that just makes me want to exhale and get ready for it, right? Yeah, and I also want to ask you a little bit specifically, what are some of the signs that you've seen in terms of what really looks, what does burnout really look like in the women and the executives, that you're dealing with?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think there are very easy 5 questions you can ask yourself. And then based on that answer, you can see whether you're one of those candidates. So here's the quick quiz. One is, do you love your job? And the second is, do you get enough sleep? The third is, do you exercise? And the sleep is 7 or more hours, and the exercise is 3 or more times a week.
Okay.
Do you have a lot of people coming and asking you for things? Volunteer for this, volunteer for that. And does your partner share household, family chores 50-50? So based on your answers to that is whether or not you are really a high candidate to suffer from burnout.
Wow. Yeah. And I do think that when it comes to sleep, I've read articles recently too about how your brain needs to recharge and detox. And that
Mhm.
time actually happens when you're sleeping, right? Because during the day, we're constantly thinking and using our minds. And, I wish we had a little on-off switch for our minds, but we don't. But yeah, we forget the fact that all parts of our bodies need to, just have some downtime. And there's so much. I love that quote that you were talking about. Today is the least busy day that you're going to have. Yeah, we're constantly being, asked to step up, step up, step up. And yeah, it can become really relentless. And I like that you pointed out that part about, going and asking for help,
Mhm.
because
Mhm.
there's just this habit that we have that, we think we can do it all ourselves. I know that was definitely my mantra when I was early in my career. I just felt like, if I could show everybody that I could do it all myself, that was a good thing. Um, yeah. And also, I really want to actually ask you about the partner sharing thing,
Mhm.
because I noticed too that, yes, we do have, I do have a lot of married clients, but I also have some divorced single moms. And, sometimes, we don't always have partners to be able to support us and carry 50% of the weight. What have you seen in terms of that? So, or do you see that the single moms really do have a higher rate of burnout?
Well, I mean, they have to, unless they compensate by extending and changing up who is in their support network.
Mhm.
You do have to have someone to share that load with. So I think those who are successful are the ones that really have a nurturing, supportive community, and they feel like they switch it out. I think it's the people who have partners who are not sharing it that are the most stressed.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Yeah,
Yeah,
because that actually creates a more,
the dynamics.
yeah, that can create more of a drain on the relationship. And yeah, it actually is expended energy, or I call it leaky energy. It's like you're
That's a good
spending,
phrase.
your bucket has holes in it,
Yeah.
and you're leaking energy all over the place because you're dealing with upsets and constantly not addressing a challenge. So I also want to know, though, is there a gender bias when it comes to burnout? I'm just curious.
Well, why don't we talk in terms of what are the types of things that are associated, maybe more of the like the criteria or attributes,
Okay.
and the folks that tend to be more likely to suffer from burnout are people who don't delegate,
Mhm.
people who will not ask for the needed resources, that they need, and
Mhm.
those who continually say yes to whatever comes their way. Those who have high standards that they apply continuously, no matter what the situation is, and those who spend a lot of time nurturing others. And when you look at those five things, I do think there is a tendency for women to be more likely to have those attributes. Again, it's very individual, but if you want to do a broad brush, I do see more women that have those traits than men. So they're probably more likely to suffer from burnout.
Right. And I totally get that. And kind of going back to my other comment of always saying yes. And I just had this fear that if people saw that I couldn't do it myself, that somehow I was weaker. Like there was this limiting belief that I had when I was when I was in the pharmaceutical industry, that, I just wanted to be that high powered woman that could just, do it all and, be this smart woman in the room and all of that. And to that extent, I would not ask for resources, or if I did ask for resources, it would sometimes be like, if I got pushback, I wouldn't go back and actually say, well, no, here's the rationale as to really why we need that, or we need to change the scope of work. Like, I just never, it was so weird. It was almost ingrained that you didn't push back on certain people, or
Mhm.
it was almost like negotiating. There was no negotiating. If the answer was yes, it was yes. If it was no, it was no. And and I don't know where I picked that up, or whether that was cultural to some
Yeah.
of the companies that I worked in, but sometimes that was like the what do they call that? The silent
Unconscious
norm.
bias. Yeah. So
Yeah.
think about, just from the perspective, how much more respect you would get as a business professional if you put things in terms of business, that we need these resources because of this, and if we don't have it, here are the potential ramifications. It's straightforward, and people will see the logic to it. And if they say, no, we don't have the resources, then at least you've made the case known. But you say, where did it come from? And if you imagine back, for those of us who can, in the 80s, where you've got the baby, the woman with the baby on her hip, the phone against her ear, and a frying pan in the other hand. And that was our role model, that we needed to do everything as a working mother, and a good mother, and a good working professional. And all of that was just, it was ridiculous when you really think about it.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. And I think too, there was just this idea that, we had this unrealistic high standard, and it was a bar that we could never reach. and it kept moving. Like, I kept on feeling like, wow, it keeps moving and moving and moving, and it keeps on getting harder. And I kept on buying into it. And, and in some ways, sometimes, it does depend upon, who your sphere of influence is, and who are the people that you surround yourself with. So having that high perfection, I'll even call it perfectionism, because I think I'm a recovering perfectionist. There's sometimes it's within the people that you surround yourself with, because I had a bunch of A players that would just, keep me on my game and, continuously push me, but it didn't always serve me.
Yeah, exactly. But Judi, if you think back to some of the people who likely were being promoted, they were not necessarily the people who were hitting 100% on everything. One of the reasons they got promoted was because they got stuff done. And the way they got stuff done was they delegated, etc. They asked for, and if you like, demanded the resources. They didn't say yes to everything. But on those standards, they made a choice, a good trade-off. Mm-hmm. This thing could only be 60%. This thing really needs 100%. And because they put their energies in the right place on the important things, and I do think some of us have a challenge where it's just like 100% for everything, right? So why do we do that to ourselves? So try and surround yourself with people who not only can help you, but also people to say, Judi, why are you doing that? Like, really, that with love and full support of you, and because we really do have to help each other.
Yes, absolutely. I think that having those people that challenge us to say no, and to be able to help us even communicate more effectively, because I think there were times that I just asked yes or no questions, like, hey, can I have this resource? And the answer was no. And it was like, okay, I guess it's no. But to what you were saying is that, and I've learned this again along the way, is that, leadership is always about choices, consequences, and trade-offs. Mm-hmm. So being able to give another leader the opportunity to make a well-informed choice, I think, is really important. It's knowing that we always, as leaders, we always have those choices, consequences, and trade-offs, and it's never perfect. So when we think about, I guess some of the stuff that I feel like we're talking about is about the resilience. So can you talk a little bit more about what resilience is, and why do we think it's so important these days?
So when I think about burnout, I think about resilience as the number one solution to bounce back from that. I hope it would even prevent it in the first place. So resilience is how you respond and adapt to events in your life. And you can adjust your level of resiliency. You can make this stronger. It's not something you're born with and that's it. So you do want to think about what are those components that are bringing you and making you a resilient person, and then work on those to try to become more resilient.
Right. And I think that the one word also that kind of piques my interest is that word respond. Because again, I can remember being very reactive, and learning how to be responsive and being able to respond to challenges and go with the flow and whatnot. I think that, that's really an important distinction, because some of us operate in the world of like being on autopilot. Like we just think that, any question, the answer has to be, yes, I can do it. And yes, I will. And there's no pause. It's like, there's no pause button. It's just yes, yes, yes. And trying to get things done. The focus is trying to get things done, as opposed to really having a full picture. So with that said, what are some of the, things that we can think about in terms of gaining resilience? And, are there things that you've seen within the community of the HBA and all the executive women that you've worked with? Do you notice that there's certain things?
Oh, certainly. Absolutely. I think the biggest one is to have a network, a supportive network of people that you can go to, whether it is for information and knowledge, or it's, can you pick my kids up at school? Or, like literally, you need to have a very broad network. So that means inside your family, inside your work, and outside your work. So I think that the people that have that in place are absolutely well positioned. The second is you have to have a good self-confidence. What is your self-image? Who are you? What's your brand? And how are you projecting yourself? And having that confidence to be able to say no, and those sorts of things, to ask for the resources. The third, and this is something I have had to learn, and I still challenge myself, is I'm accurately estimating how long it takes to do something. I'm always very positive and optimistic about what it will take. And what happens is I do want to fulfill on my commitments, which means if I didn't estimate correctly, I put a lot of stress in the engine to now need that timeline. So, just pause and watch that for a little while and see whether or not that is what you're doing. And if you are doing it, just add some level percentage above it. So if you think it's 5 hours, add 50% on. Just do that for a little while until you can see, wow, not only am I more accurate, I'm less stressed, and I'm more likely to hit the target with whomever I've committed that, so I can be accountable. I think the managing our emotions and our feelings, that ability does help us we don't worry as much. We're more prepared for things when something happens. We're not flustered by them, and we leave it at work. Business is business, and then you're not going home and dreaming about it, or just, you're trying to fall asleep at night and you're struggling with it. So that can use up a lot of your time to be productive and get things done, and lead to burnout. So the people that really have that piece, that doesn't mean you go through life as a robot, but it really does. This is where I would say model your male colleagues. Think about sports analogies. Brush off the dirt and keep going. And then the last, I would probably say, are your skills, and that's about communication and problem solving. If you don't start out being very clear and direct about what you're looking for, what you're expecting of the person, and you start out back-footed and likely are not going to get what you thought you were going to get. And now all of a sudden we jump in and we're doing somebody else's work because we were clear right up front. And then problem solving. If you get flustered because your problem solving skills are not good, you're going to take a lot more time, and you're going to stress and anguish over every decision. So I think that those are the 5 things that I've seen that people have. And when they have it, they are absolutely less prone to burnout.
Wow. Well, and I just want to reiterate these key points for everybody and just repeat them. Yeah, the supportive network, in inside and outside of work, right? Because sometimes you do need to vent, and it's not with always the people that you don't always want to vent with the people that you work with. So it's great having outside support. 100% confidence, your brand, being able to be that person, that show, like, I always say that your brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. And you have to manage that, whether you are in a corporation or you have clients, you have that brand, you have that image that you want people to see you as. And, while we can say, oh yeah, well, it doesn't matter what people think of me. Yeah, in business, it kind of does. Like, you do have to have a little bit of awareness, self-awareness about that. And I think it couples with the next one, which I totally laugh at because I'm also very optimistic, and I tend to think that time warps in my favor all the time. And I have these estimates of time that I can get things done. And then I've gotten much better. I've gotten really, really good at it. But to your point, that can actually impact your brand. If you're that person that people are constantly saying, oh, hi, I'm sorry. Yeah, that's going to be late. And it's like, no, actually the ball has to go down it's not just passing it off to the next person. So I really love that. Yeah. Being able to manage time and give yourself that buffer time, give yourself that buffer of breathing time and reflecting time to make really good decisions. And yeah, the last part, I mean, definitely communication and problem solving. I think that clear agreements, being able to articulate, I am doing this, you're doing that, we're getting it done at this time, and the handoff is going to be this way. Yeah, are we on the same page? Because so many times we talk vaguely, or we assume that once we've been, and it goes like this, and it's like, well, I thought you said this, and I thought, and then it becomes this big, huge conflict, and then you do have to problem solve. So sometimes I even think that the clear agreements prevent the problem solving, but obviously you need to be able to address it when things pop up.
You're right. And something that you just said is it contributes about the emotions. If you are willing to have the crucial conversations early on, you are much more likely to dispel and make so that it's not an issue. If you do not have those crucial conversations early on, it builds and builds and builds into the point where not only are you stressed, and when you do have the conversation, it's horrible. So that's another one in terms of managing your time. Clear communication is having conversations early on. And that is actually there are a lot of books and articles that people can read to do that better.
Oh yeah, that book, Crucial Conversations, I've read it and I've given it to my clients. I totally love it. I absolutely love it. And the piece there too is about, crucial conversations does take courage. So in some ways I would even make the connection of, dealing with burnout is having the courage to be able to be there for yourself and to learn, how to speak up for yourself. Because a lot of these things are about learning how to speak up for yourself and be there, have that self-confidence. It's like there's an inner game here that reflects outward. So while we're talking a lot about the outward skills, it comes from an inner confidence and courage that really, I think, supports people so that they don't have the burnout.
Agreed.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I'm also curious too, like, what is it that, do you have any specific recommendations that women can start right now?
So one would be, do you have a series of mentors? I think that having mentors is a great place to talk things through. So you're not holding all of this on your own shoulders and only having your own perspective and seeing it through, one set of eyes. So having multiple mentors, I think, is a great thing. If you can afford it, I think having a coach is a really helpful thing to challenge you and ask you questions to make you think about things in a different way and point out perhaps some patterns that you might have, and that's different than what a mentor does. So I would suggest that as a pretty simple thing. If you want to go for really simple, I would go for finding a discussion buddy. So for instance, if you're in a meeting, you can have agreements that when you're in a meeting and you talk later on with that person on how you did in the meeting. So the way you were coming across, how is your brand remaining strong, et cetera. And you can also dialogue them with them offline. So you can do that for them and they for you. So I think that's a super simple way of doing that. I think joining organizations like the HBA is a very quick way to expand your community and your network. But besides just having people you can call on, you start to see how people do things, and you see they do things differently than you do. Just like the series you're doing, you learn from different people and you go, never thought about that. So it just opens up such a vista of ways that you can do things. And then perhaps just it's something very internal is, what is your true north? What's your North Star? What is your compass that is guiding you? Because when you do have those situations of a yes or no, or what have you, making decisions, if you keep that compass in front of you, it does make things.
Yes, absolutely. And just to reiterate those mentors, I definitely have my board of directors, and some of them know that they're on my board of directors, and some of them are like secret board of directors. They don't even know. I haven't told them. But yeah, those are the people that I call on for advice, like, because sometimes I really do need someone who's great at finance or great at IT, and I love to have those mentors. And yes, I have a coach. I actually walk my talk. I have a coach as well. Feedback, I think, was what you were talking about having someone else give you more self-awareness, give you, an understanding of what those blind spots are, because we all have blind spots. And, joining a community like HBA, I mean, I have some of the best long-lasting friendships and women that I look up to from the HBA. I mean, it's just an amazing community. And whether or not you're in the pharmaceutical or healthcare industry, and you guys are worldwide. I mean, it's like, if I'm not mistaken, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but HBA is the largest women's organization, professional women's organization around the world. Is that still true?
Yes. For leadership in the healthcare field, absolutely. Yeah.
For leadership in the healthcare field, right.
And we're still growing, and we have a lot of requests to come to even more countries. So yes, we are. It's something that is very important to companies, because they see that gender diverse teams are bringing better financial results, better employee engagement, etc. So yeah.
Right. And it's a very inclusive kind of organization. Like I have to say, I didn't feel like there were cliques in there. Like I felt like there were friendships, like there were friendship circles, but when you really got into the organization and giving back, I mean, that was the other thing that I felt that just gave me such joy, was being able to give back to the community, not only be a part of it, but be able to give back. And then, like you said, having your North Star, having your priorities, knowing where it is, because it helps you make decisions, and it really helps guide you in terms of where you want to go for your career. So we have gone through, oh my gosh, I've already highlighted, more than a dozen, probably 24 golden nuggets that we've gotten out of this conversation. But I have to ask you one last question. If there's one thing that you want businesswomen to walk away with from our conversation, what's the one thing that you really want them to remember?
That no is a complete sentence. Even when we do decide to say no, we go into such palaver about, why it's no, and I'm so sorry, and all of this. It's just, no. You can say no, thank you, if you really want.
You want to add a little something, right?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, Lori, I think leaving it on that note, I think that's great advice for everybody. And Lori, thank you so much. You have been a mentor and a friend of mine for many, many years. So thank you for being a part of this. It really does mean so much to me. And I also want to remind everybody that you can go to the link below for Lori's free gift. And if you've already purchased your VIP Backstage Pass, you're going to have access to her bonus as well. And not to worry if you haven't already purchased it. Our Backstage Pass, as you know, is your ability to download all of the interviews all at once. So you have the benefit of having another burnout solution right here built into this series, because you don't have to worry, you don't have to wait. You can put all of these interviews onto your phone, and you can listen to them whenever you need to, especially when you need that extra, game-changing content, to be able to get those messages. So I invite you to do that. And last but not least, I want to leave you with a message of just, remember, Instead of burning the candle at both ends, let your light burn brightly, knowing that you are more than enough. Most importantly, you can create your own burnout solution, and you don't have to do it alone. I will see you at the next awesome interview, and I will see you today in our Facebook group for the recap and the Q&A. So I look forward to seeing you then. And lastly, again, Lori, thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, Judy.
Bye.